special edition of Women's Wednesday. We want to hear from you, your experience of sexual assault, sexual harassment. Not okay. Yes, all women. We want to get you on board, and we already have plenty of you on hold. We're going to move. And again, if all the women in the audience, we want to be your brief accounts, if possible, summarizing them. That way we can get even more women on. We want people to hear the impact of this and just how prevalent this actually is. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Amy's in Arizona. Amy, God bless you. Go right ahead.
Hey, Mark and Brittany, Crooked Brittany. I'm so happy to be on your show. You guys provide a lot of great information for all of us. But before I tell you I'll be very brief. Before I tell you my story, I just want to say I consider myself not a victim because of the very thing that Brittany was just describing, the feminist movement. Really, there was a lot of strong women who helped me, and I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm in my late 50s. I was assaulted by a boss when I was 20, and there was not the term sexual harassment. It didn't even exist.
You were assaulted by your boss?
I was, and it was frightening. My dad worked in the same industry, and I was paranoid to say anything to even him or anybody else because I thought he would lose his job, because at the time, women were subjugated. We were less than in the marketplace, and this was a very male-dominated industry. But it was, it's when I hear the term, I hate this term, by the way, locker room talk. It reminds me of this term, good old boys club. Yeah. There's this thing that women, and I don't want to be a part of it because I think it's incredibly, incredibly misogynistic, but there is a good old boys network that's out there. And I'm kind of sick right now of men speaking on this issue.
Yeah.
No offense, Mark, but I do think that women are the ones who need to speak to it, and young women especially.
Well, listen, that's why I'm opening up these phone lines so we can hear from women like you. Amen. I want to get as many people on as I can, okay? But thank you for your call.
Great, thank you.
And thank you for sharing your story.
Amy.
All right, take care. God bless you now.
We've got Sarah in Florida. Sarah, tell us your story.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Brittany. I kind of disagree with what Amy just said, but my story is from 1981 to 2001, I was active duty Navy, and I was twice sexually assaulted by two senior petty officers, because in the military, anybody who outrank you, they have power and positional authority over you. So you had a loss from day one. The thing that I disagree about what Amy said, I think sexual assault and rape and the domestic violence will stop once men start requiring men to stop it. Because we as women have been carrying this burden for years and years and years, ever since the first woman was put on earth. And I think once men start making it accountable, making them other ones accountable, and stop this good old boys club, it won't stop.
Once men do it, it will stop. Until they do, I understand. Right, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it is. That's what I mean. Once men start making other men accountable, calling them up on it, saying, "Hey, man, you're wrong," and the law
and you're talking about the military. We definitely know how prevalent it is in the military, and that's shame.
Yeah, and I'm speaking to the brother who you was talking to earlier about. He doesn't know any of his military buddies who would talk like that. It's because the guy that's sitting right next to you is the one who's doing it, because he put on a different facade.
Well, no. To be clear, he didn't say that. He said he knew men who did it. He just didn't know men who said things like Donald Trump says, like, "I'm gonna move on her like a bee and grab by the pea." He just never heard that before. He had heard the other stuff. No men have heard that.
I know, but what I'm saying is the man who would say the thing that Donald Trump said, you would never know who he is because he's sitting right next to you.
All right. Thank you, Sarah.
Meaning they're everywhere. Right?
Yes, they're everywhere.
Yes, but men are essential to the feminist movement, so I couldn't agree more. So spread the word to all your male friends.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, God bless. Take care now. Angela's in Cali. Angela, God bless you. Go right here. Welcome to Women's Wednesday. Your story.
Thank you for taking my call. I called in yesterday to make a point about sexual assault, a very specific kind of thing that's really problematic and dangerous. And I, as a young woman, worked on political campaigns, and I was sexually assaulted, and I was thinking about those women who came out years later, and I told people in my immediate circle, but I didn't feel like I could I felt like it would change my career if I said something, because I was so low on the totem pole. I felt like it would change something. But I still see that person from time to time. And if he ever ran for office, I don't care that it's 20 years later. I would come out and say something, especially if other women were coming out and saying something, because it was proven through time that this is the kind of thing that he did. But the other thing that Trump did and has said, and it's been that caught my ear, is I'm also a mother. And if some man said to my 10-year-old daughter, I would date you in 20 years, I'd be highly offended, and I would look at him as a pedophile. Because who's attracted to a 10-year-old little girl
That's
to say,
something wrong with that.
oh, in just a few years, I would be with you. That's
sick. That's
yeah,
sick.
you shouldn't be sizing up a child for the potential of dating them.
I don't know why people haven't picked up on that particular angle, but that is so inappropriate to say to a little girl.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela. God bless you. Thank you for your call.
We've got Heather in Cali. Welcome to Women's Wednesday.
Hi. I'm calling for a few facets as well. I feel like sexual assault is so prevalent that we sometimes blame ourselves for it, and we don't report it because we feel like maybe it was because I was drinking, maybe it was because I was dressed like this. I have 4 daughters now. I'm 36. I have daughters ages ranging 14 down to 7. And I feel like...
You 36 with 4 daughters? Lord have mercy. Okay. We're going to pray for you. Woo!
Well, thank you. I love them all. And my husband's a Marine, too, and I followed him around with his career. And so I put my career on hold to raise them, and I really have tried to just give them all the tools, tell them, you can always say no. No adult can ever touch you. And if you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to hug somebody. I feel like it starts young. We need to educate our children from the time that they know their body parts. And we need to educate the boys, too. I don't have any boys, but I have a nephew, and he's 7 also.
Sure.
And I feel like from a young age, we need to teach the boys that, it's not boys will be boys. It's respect. We respect other people's bodies. And we have to get consent for hugs, for kisses, for anything.
So Heather, but what we also want to unite is hear from women in the audience about their personal experiences with sexual assault and sexual harassment. Have you ever been a victim yourself?
Yes, I feel like numerous times. And these things have come up over the course of kind of reliving this with people, even my friends on Facebook. We started posting about it. And my own experience that stands out to me the most was in college. I was at a party, so this is another where, you feel like, oh, well, I was drinking, maybe I, brought this upon myself. But a person that I did not even know pushed me against the wall in a dark hallway and, basically groped me and tried to forcibly kiss me. The only way that I felt like I got out of that situation was that I was there with a group of friends, and one of them was a guy, and he did help me get out of that situation. We all just left at that point. Yeah. But I feel like, we talk about the college age problems. But this was happening even on dates in high school.
Yeah.
I feel like
it's happening everywhere. It's happening a lot.
Yep.
That's right. Yep. That's right.
So,
thank you for your call, and God bless those wonderful daughters. That's something. That's quite a responsibility.
Yeah, good luck with that crew.
Have a good night.
All right, take care now. 866-99 Sirius. Christine's in Florida. Christine, God bless you. Welcome for Women's Wednesday. Your experience with sexual harassment or sexual assault.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I am pretty upset at the way that the victims are blamed, and the fact that it does affect our employment. For example, when I was younger, probably about 25 years ago, my first job was at a fast food restaurant. A lot of kids' first jobs are there. And the manager, who was much, much older, married with three children, would walk behind me in the very small office that they had. And I could tell, that he was excited walking behind me. And when I did finally notify the management, he was not terminated, and his wife, I guess, found out, left him, and so, they blame me for that somehow, and I was terminated. And then, turn around 25 years later or 20 years later, after I became an attorney and was a victim of a domestic violence situation, I went into the hospital. My boss was very supportive at the time. When I got out of the hospital and tried to go back to work, he indicated that he was going to let me go because he felt that I didn't have good decision-making skills. And then he had the gall to try to deny my unemployment.
Wow.
I appealed and I won, but I had to relive the nightmare again in this appeal hearing just to get unemployment for being wrongfully terminated because I didn't have quote unquote good decision making skills in the.
I've heard that trick before.
I'd say your employer is projecting his feelings of himself upon you as far as decision making goes.
I've heard of that trick before. You're right. Christine, thank you for sharing your story with us. Okay.
Thank you very much for doing this today. I appreciate it.
All right, take care. God bless you.
Kendra in Illinois, welcome to Women's Wednesday. What's your story?
Hi, thanks guys for taking my call. So I'll start with my first experience with sexual harassment, which kind of colored how I dealt with it when it's happened other times, which is bad. But it was the most devastating. I was about 16, driver's education instructor. Never actually touched or said anything to me, but he did it behind my back. The only thing he did in front of me was I had on a skirt one day, he complimented me on my legs. And then probably about a month into the class when it was about over, some other classmates that had gone with me, some guys, started telling me on the way home, hey, he says things about you while you're not there. And I said, what do you mean? And they're like, well, how do you think you got an A on the driver's exam and nobody else did? And I was like, because I passed it.
Right.
And they're like, oh, no, he's saying he should fail you so you could come back and have to sit on his lap and take the test.
Wow. Wow.
He calls you up to the desk so he can watch you walk away. And I just, the humiliation at 16 to have other teenagers, him talking like that when I wasn't there, to mostly young men and some girls, and then for people to think that, you know what, I didn't earn my grade, that I was such a good student, and to feel like that was devastating to me. And he never touched me, but trust me,
that still had an impact.
And so for the rest of my life, when it's happened, I've just been a soldier.
And that speaks, the fact that it was just words, it speaks volumes to what's going on right now, because a lot of people defending Trump are saying it's just words. It's just words. And
but it was devastating as a teenager, and it turned me into a soldier that I shouldn't have been for the rest of my adult life. So whenever it happened and people did touch me, I would do things like just make sure I wasn't in the room with them by myself anymore. Or I would just call a coworker in and say, hey, such and such is in here. You know, he likes to get frisky with me, instead of doing what I should have done. But
it's a life of defense, really.
It's a life of defense. And so, you know, it's just a lesson that physical assault and harassment isn't just the physical acts of someone with you. It's the language and degrading you and making other people look at you in a certain way, and you have no idea.
No, that's part of it, right. And then, you know, you're ostracized.
Yeah, all it takes is words to minimize you and make you feel like you're just your body, you're just your looks, you're just it reduces you down to that, and that's why the words are that powerful, and they do matter. And
they do matter, and especially when it's somebody that's coming from someone who could have been your dad.
Yeah.
Kendra, thank you for sharing your story. Appreciate your courage.
Thanks, Kendra.
And appreciate everyone's courage as well. We're hearing from women in the audience who have been victims of sexual assault, sexual harassment. You're welcome to call in now and share your stories. 866-99-SIRIUS. Maryland's in Oregon. Maryland, God bless you. Go right ahead.
Hi, Mark. I was calling because a couple of things. One, I'm a therapist, and I hear this all the time. Two, I had these things happen to me. When I was 13, I was raped. When I was in the 8th grade, this boy would run up behind me and feel my legs, and he'd do it every day. When I was 18, I had a stranger grab me in a restaurant and kiss me. His friends had to pull him off. When I was 20, a man walked up to me, grabbed my breast in front of a casino in Vegas. And there's been many things like that have happened throughout the years. But it's really a difficult thing for women to come forth with this. I hear this every day, and they hold this inside, and they live with this. And it's really terrible that this is all going on, and people are saying, oh, Trump is okay. That was a long time ago. I think it's a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
So now, you're a therapist. Do you treat women who have been victims?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Marilyn, thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I just wanted to share my story, that's all.
Well, no, that's what we want people to do. We want people to hear
and
that.
And the fact that you listed off a handful of situations where you encountered harassment, assault, I mean, that seems to be the case with just about everything I've read. What we're hearing today here is that it's not just one time. And for some women, it's, a daily occurrence, whether it be walking down the street, at the office, at school. It's not just a one-time thing that happens. It's something that we are constantly dealing with every day, that we are on guard, ready for it to happen any day in any situation. And, your situation is just another example of that, is that it happens all the time.
Exactly. It's a constant violation sometimes,
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thank you, Marilyn. Thank you
Thanks,
for
Marilyn.
being there for other victims as well in your vocation, okay?
All right. Thank you.
God bless you now. Take care.
All right.
866-99 Sirius.
Julia in Pittsburgh, welcome to Women's Wednesday.
Hi. Yeah. So I'm calling about the times that I was sexual harassment on the job, and touched a couple of times and didn't know who did it, and so the first one was physical assault, junior college. I would go to school, junior college, after I would get out of high school. I would go in the evening in this program for high school students, and it is hard to talk about these things. I actually was physically assaulted coming home from junior college one night. And the guy had a knife to my throat, so when I screamed, he said, "Don't scream, I have a knife." And then I hurried up and shut up, and my purse flew out of my arms, my books flew somewhere, and I never saw this guy's face. To this day, I don't know what he looked like.
Wow.
And this was back in the late 70s. I actually was very paranoid after that. I got away from him. I was very, very weak and traumatized because I had to run, and it was only because a car had came up. And I don't know who this was in this car. I just saw a person reach over, and either they unlocked the car door or locked the car door. I don't know if they were together or not. So anyway, I ended up fighting him off, getting away, and that really left a long time paranoid. I ran to some girl's house, some lady's house. Me and my sisters would see this lady every day leaving, and it's a house that we would pass by, and that was the closest house I could run to, but it was like a little median I had to run up because we lived in a suburb right outside the city limits, which is why when I got off the bus I would have to walk, and it was a little darker. But this guy had gained on me. He had been walking and walking and walking. I could hear him, and he actually said something, and I said, huh. As soon as I said, huh, that's when he grabbed me. But anyway, I got over that, powered through, and a few years later, went into the military from the salon. I'm a cosmetologist, and experienced it on my second duty assignment, and found out that this guy was not going to leave me alone. Guys were saying, oh, he likes you, and he never showed up here because he would come to training sites. And this resulted in, insubordination, because I had been invited by him to Christmas parties. And I had got there right after Thanksgiving, after taking a leave on my second duty assignment in the military. And Sergeant Carter ended up going to Hawaii, and I ended up with 14 of 14.
You ended up with what?
14 and 14, because this thing started right after I got to my duty assignment after Thanksgiving, and it was around Christmas time.
So you were charged with insubordination?
14 and 4. Yes, because it had lasted so long, I ended up going off on him because by the summer I was in trouble because I went off on him because he started making me feel these things at work because I never would take invitations when he first met me going when I first got there between the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas parties. He kept asking me to. I actually had a fiance I was at Fort Gordon. My fiance was in South Carolina at Fort Jackson. But anyway, he knew that because he saw the engagement ring and everything. But by the summer, because this started in the winter, about Christmas time, but by the summer, I was standing in the commander's office, who was a female, and she kept telling me she couldn't believe that Sergeant Carter would do anything like this.
Wow.
And there were other guys that knew about it, and Sergeant Carter was a senior NCO. I was just a specialist, an E4.
So was he ever disciplined?
No, he wasn't, because she said that, and because this thing lasted longer, that was my first time ever encountering something like that. That was the first time and so it did lead to something, which I guess I should have reported it earlier. But if she said that, I know how the first sergeant, the commander of the unit said she didn't believe that Sergeant Carter would do anything like that. The first sergeant of the unit said, "You know how guys are. You know how guys are." This was back in the 80s. This was 85. And so that's the feedback I got was, and
nothing ever came up.
Yes, the first sergeant was in the office. I was in the office, and the commander of the unit was in the office. So the first sergeant, a guy, commander was a female. I'm standing there getting charged with 14 and 14 because I ended up going off on him, which was in front of someone. And he wrote me
for those of us who don't know what 14 and 14 means, what does that mean?
14 days 14 days extra duty.
Gotcha. Okay.
14 days restriction to the barracks. So I had to go to my house and get my clothes to stay there at the barracks for 2 weeks, because at 14 and 14 with a suspended bus. That means if I got in trouble after this, I would have got busted down a rank.
Julia, thank you for your story. I hate to cut you off. We got a lot of other women to get to, though, on the line, okay? But thank you for your courage in sharing that, all right?
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah.
Special edition of Women's Wednesday with Crooked Brittany here. And hearing your stories of sexual assault, sexual harassment, we wanted to get the women in our audience on the record on this Women's Wednesday, because people need to see and hear just how prevalent, how common this really is. So we're going to pick up here and get to more of your calls.
So we're going to start off with Carolyn in San Francisco. Thanks for joining us, Carolyn.
Hi, I have a story at a tech startup. I was a tech writer, and this one guy was obsessed with me and kept following me around, and finally just did things like pick me up. And I went to my manager, and
He picked you up physically off the ground?
He literally picked me up off the ground and just made little jokes, and I told him to stop. And I went to my manager, and I said he was doing it. And the first thing the manager thought, my father had died the week before. My manager had happened to put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Did you think that was sexual harassment too?" And I said, no. It wasn't. That isn't harassment. And this guy was a sweet guy, but he ended up, I was a contractor, and suddenly my contract was over the next week.
Wow.
Convenient.
And I talked to a woman at this company, and she told me that he kept doing this. He did this to 3 more women who were like, again, I was a tech writer, they were secretaries, like he was a programmer. So there's like this little pecking order thing going on. And the thing that ticks me off is my response to this, and I did the same thing when I was in high school, and some guy did the Trump thing. He reached up under my dress in a group of guys. I gained weight to hide myself. And as soon as this thing happened, I gained 40 pounds. And I'm thinking about this now. I still have that 40 pounds on because now I'm taken seriously when I'm at my jobs. I'm not treated like a girl. I'm treated like a person. And I'm still ticked at myself. I'm like, why? I'm very proud of these women who remain beautiful despite this happening to them, because my defense was to be less like somehow as if that's going to help you, because I know these guys go after anybody, but to look as unappealing as possible.
Wow.
And then what did that do to me?
No, absolutely. It's sad to me when women are changing their appearance to fight against what, advances from people and to be taken seriously like you do. I mean, I even think about it's situations where I've maybe worn my hair up or dressed a little bit more tomboyish because I knew certain people I would be dealing with, and I didn't want to be judged a certain way for, having long blonde hair or, looking feminine, because you worry that you're not going to be taken seriously, or you worry that you're just going to be reduced to your looks. So I think what you're saying is probably something that happens a whole lot.
And the other funny thing that happened is I mentioned this to my grandmother, and she said, well, that stuff never happened to me. One time, she was literally selling cars, must have been eons ago, in a Ford dealership, and she said, this customer put his hands on me, and I told him to stop. And I said, what happened? She said, nothing happened. And then she said later, she came back to me and said, I lost my job the next day.
There you go.
She was like in such denial that she couldn't even put those two stories together until I told her my story.
Yeah.
Wow. Carolyn, thank you for your courage and sharing that, okay?
Thanks for asking.
And you're beautiful at any weight.
Yeah, you are. You're still beautiful all the way around, okay?
Well, thank you.
Take care now. All right, bye-bye. Linda's in Nevada. Linda, God bless you. Your story, please. Welcome to Women's Wednesday.
Well, other than being sexually abused by two family members when I was about 11 and 12, when I was 19, I was a little bit of a hottie, and I was working at a pizza place, and I became friendly with the assistant manager, who was only a few years older than me, and went on a couple of different social events with him, football games, things like that. And one day he just kind of came at me and gave me a big old kiss, and I backed him away, and I was like, I don't want that to be, our relationship. I just want to be friends with you. Well, the next time I went to work, which was about 3 days later, we, joking around and stuff, and he said something to me, and I said, shut up. I got fired the next day for insubordination.
Wow.
He was waiting for his opportunity.
He was waiting for me to do something because I rejected this guy, and it was just, it was so ridiculous. If it would have been like a job that I really cared about, I probably would have done something about it. But it was, a stupid little menial job. But still, it goes on all the time. And I have 3 sons of my own. I know that I've taught my children better. If I ever heard of them disrespecting women the way Donald Trump is, and these people are locker room banter crap, my kids are 30, 28, and 25. They'd still get a backhand from me.
Yeah.
And that's it. Really, that's where it needs to begin, is talking with our children openly, educating them on what's okay and what's not okay, and especially for women, what's acceptable and how that we're allowed to feel uncomfortable, that we're allowed to set boundaries, whatever boundaries they may be, for our own bodies. And that is
that was one really great thing about my ex-husband, is he really put it down when my boys ever got even slightly out of line disrespecting me. That was not okay, and it was not okay to disrespect any women.
Great.
Yeah.
So I think they learned well, and they won't be grabbing anybody by the pee. I can tell you that.
That's good.
Thank you, Linda, for sharing your story.
Linda.
Okay, bless your heart. Take care now. 866-99 Sirius Special Women's Wednesday. Your stories of sexual harassment and assault.
And we've got Beatrice and Callie from Women's Wednesday. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Just a couple of quick stories. This is, again, Army 1980s. My platoon sergeant pulled me into a Connex and told me that if I ever wanted to get promoted, that I would scratch him in some nether regions. And I told him, I looked him square in the eye, and I just said, you know what, then I guess I'm never getting promoted. And I walked right out of there.
Good for you.
And I didn't report it.
Good for you.
Yeah, I didn't report it to my chain of command because they were all pretty much in collusion with that type of behavior back then.
Right.
And another time, we were in a commo van, really small, tight area, and one of the guys told me that another guy on our team had never had a piece of what, and why don't you give him a piece of whatever? And I told him, you know what? I said, you have one of those. Why don't you give it to him? And it stopped. But, you know, they just thought they could get away with murder back then. And it's scary that today this still exists. So thank you for letting me
thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story. Okay. Thank you very much. 866-99-SIRIUS. Maria's in Ohio. Maria, God bless you. Welcome to Women's Wednesday. Your story of sexual harassment or assault. Hi.
Hi, Maria.
Hi. Okay, I have the, not military. I was actually raised in a small town, very religious, Jehovah's Witness, and they have this rule that if there isn't 2 witnesses to the act, it doesn't happen. That it's not an issue. So Jehovah's Witnesses are constantly being sued recently because women are stepping up and saying, hey, you didn't call the police. And when I was 12, I was molested, and I told my parents, and that actually ended up being in a judicial committee, and they questioned me and said, well, did I do anything? Did I ask for this?
Oh.
And I'm like, no, I'm 12.
Right.
You don't even know how to ask for it.
Right.
You're 12 years old.
And they said he said, no, it never happened. Since there were no 2 witnesses, therefore it didn't happen. So religion, you're supposed to go to home and have your parents raise you right, but when a religion tells that men are the rule of the roost, that men make the decisions, that they're the head of the household, like Jehovah's Witnesses and the Quiverful movement, women are just vessels, quote unquote, just vessels for procreation and being supportive to their husband. Where I really feel bad, I am no longer a Jehovah's Witness, but my heart aches for every woman that's in there. I grew up with, in the heat of the summer, all these women I grew up with had long sleeve shirts on. It did hit me, so I was like 18. I'm like, oh my God, domestic, you can actually see the black and blue marks under their neck.
Wow.
It's just rampant in these cults of hierarchy where the men are in control of the women, and you can just see it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your call, Maria. Okay.
Thank you, Maria.
All right. Take care now. 866-99-SIRIUS. Who we've got next here?
We've got Ann in New Mexico. Thanks for calling, Ann. Welcome to Women's Wednesday.
Hi. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good. I'm listening to these stories, and it's amazing how much we all have in common. So, one incident for me was when I was 12, and I had I still remember so vividly, I had an English teacher, and so he would go over we'd have a journal that we would keep, and then he'd call you to his desk to go over your journal, and so you would be there just alone with him while everybody else was busy doing their homework or whatever else they were working on. And so I was sitting next to him, and I remember that he would put his hand behind my back and he would snap my bra strap. And so he did that a couple of times, and I was really uncomfortable, and he saw me kind of pulling away, and I remember he gave me a really not a very good grade for the year. And I remember being really devastated, and I was just a kid, and I never connected the dots, but I just remember how devastated I was after working really hard and just getting graded down.
Yeah, you start questioning yourself and your value,
right?
If you're smart enough,
right? And then when I was in my early 20s, I was working for a large company, and the department I worked in was located in a different building, and it was just this manager and I worked together, and he was, always, kind of sexually, putting out sexual feelers, but you can never really pin him to anything.
Right.
And so I remember one time he was complaining about his back hurting, and he asked me if I could walk on his back, and so he lay down on the floor, and he said, just walk on my back. It just really is going to help me. And I remember doing it, but then right after that, I went to HR, and I said, I'm really, really uncomfortable being in this office with him alone. So I was so afraid of telling them what happened. I just remember, like, my heart was beating so fast, and I was so scared. But they were really good, and they said that wasn't inappropriate, and they would speak to him. And then I was really afraid that they would speak to him, so I said, would you let me talk to him first? So really, it felt like I had to protect him. So I did. I went to talk to him first and to tell him what I did. I just can't believe I did this now that I think about it, and how scared I was that I felt that I had gotten him in trouble, and I wanted him, to be able to know ahead of time what had happened and not to look at me as being disloyal to him.
Wow.
So anyway, it's just how much women carry with them and feel like they have to protect their abuser.
Right.
Yeah, and then we end up leaving ourselves behind because we're worried about the other person when we should be, caring for ourselves. And hopefully that's something that's changing, that we're seeing that standing up for ourselves is something that needs to be done, and it needs to be done for ourselves and to teach other women that they should be standing up for themselves. And we got to have that domino effect. So
Right.
Thank you, Ann, for your courage and your very touching story. Be strong, okay?
Thank you.
All right, take care now. Suzanne, welcome to Women's Wednesday. We're hearing your personal stories of sexual harassment and assault. Yes, Suzanne, go right ahead. Bless you.
My first job was in a bookstore a block from the White House, and this is like 30 years ago, and my boss was completely grotesque. I mean, he was 40, it was ancient, and one night I had to
Suzanne, you scared me for a minute. You said you were near the White House. I didn't know what you were going to say, but go ahead.
Not at the White House. No.
And you said 30 years ago. I said, oh, Lord. Okay, go ahead. I'm not ready for that. I can't hear this tonight, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Clarify, not in the White House.
Okay, right.
And, I was an intern. No, I'm kidding. And we were all alone in the bookstore, and we were ironically doing inventory on the Father's Day cards. And he just said, "Oh, you're so gorgeous," and all this crap. And then it had already been arranged that he was going to take me home, and it was dark, and I didn't really have another way to get home. So he took me home, and then he just stopped along the way, and he started saying, same shit and stuff. And so I said, I really more like a mother to my friends. I was 17. And, but, nothing worked. And the killer was I got home.
You said, wait a minute, you said you're more like a mother.
No, I said to him, "Oh, people my friends think of me like their mother. They can, but it didn't work."
Well played. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, well,
when really just saying no should be
right.
Yeah, exactly. But then I got home and I was very shaken up, and I told my mother, and she said, "Are you sure you didn't do anything to make him think that was okay?" It's like, that's my mother.
Ouch.
I mean,
that's old school.
Ouch. Yeah. And so, that's just stayed with me. And I think it really influenced how I thought of myself, as I thought of myself as dirty. And, so it had a big effect. And the other thing I want to say is that, people are talking about men shouldn't do this and stuff, but we have to start a lot earlier. And, I have a son, and, I talk about don't touch women, don't touch girls, always get consent. I mean, he's too young to, but anyway, but these boys, and they call it sowing their wild oats, they can get away with anything, and you're supposed to just brush it off.
Yeah.
It's very hard for middle school girls.
Yeah.
Because they have to be nice, or else everybody picks on them.
Yep.
And I just, this has to start. This rape entitlement. We have to nip that in the bud very early.
Yes.
Agreed. Thank you so much for your call.
Can I just ask a question? This isn't on topic, but I've just been obsessing about this. Has Trump had another security meeting? Because the guy's unhinged.
He's supposed to be having regular security meetings. That's our understanding.
Oh, my God. Because I'm just waiting for him to blurt something out. But anyway, thank you so much for talking about this.
Thank you,
all right.
Suzanne.
Thank you for your courage and sharing your story. 866-99 Sirius.
We got Linda in San Antonio. Welcome to Women's Wednesday.
Quickly for me,
Thank
Linda.
you.
Not a lot of time. Please. Yes.
Okay. So I was working for a video production company, and we had a client. He's a multimillionaire in my city. We were doing a project for him, and I was in charge of the project. I was the producer. Then I was laid off, and he called me and said, I want to hire you to do another video project. It's, something close about someone I cared about. And, it was all legit. The whole thing was normal. It was about, this guy who died who's really important to him. He's making sort of an homage. So I said, sure. He said, come to my home. We'll talk about the project. I was in my 20s, didn't think anything of it. I go to his home. His children are there playing in another room. We sit down in this big table, and we're talking about the project, and he just looks at me and says, so have you ever had sex with another woman?
Oh, boy.
And I don't know where I got the courage to say this, but I'm surprised today at myself. And I looked at him and I said, I don't think that's an appropriate question.
Yeah.
Good for you.
But here's the kicker. I still work for him. I still took the $300 he gave me because I was 23. I had no job. I had no savings. I had nothing. I still did the project for him.
Right.
I totally felt dirty. And my cousin, who's 20 years older and has worked many, many corporations, I told her about it, and she said, well, welcome to the working world. This is just how it is.
Yeah.
And, thankfully, over time, when people have said things I haven't liked at working situations, I've been able to go to someone immediately and say, that needs to be nipped in the bud. That's wrong. I'm very strong about it. But when you're 23 and you have nothing, you take the money. Yeah. And this whole issue with Trump and his being able to do whatever he wants because people are afraid of him, because people are afraid of their position in life, because they know if they say no, he will destroy them.
Yeah, right. We know that's the deal.
Yes, that has been, I wouldn't say triggering, that's a little strong, but that has been making me think about this situation again. That everyone acts the way they do because they're afraid of the power that he has to destroy their lives.
And afraid of the retaliation. You're right. You're absolutely right.
That's right.
Linda, I'm sorry I'm short on time. Thank you for your courage and telling your story.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of your courage. We heard stories from many of our listeners. Sorry we didn't get to everyone. Their stories of sexual abuse, sexual harassment, sexual assault. And this won't be the last time we do this.
No, I think this is something we need to keep going.
Right.
Important conversation to have.
Thank you to Crooked Brittany for
Thank
being
you.
here. All right, folks. That's Women's Wednesday for this Wednesday. We'll be back. This is MIP.